How's it going, everybody? My name's Divine, and today's video is an updated guide to my old beginner Revenant farming guide. Reasoning behind this video is that Revenants have changed a great deal since that old video, and there are many new game mechanics I think players should be aware of. Alright, so let's jump right in and figure out how to get to those Revenant Caves. Now I'm going to bring up my map here, and we are currently in the Ferox Enclave. Now we have two entrances we can get to the Revenant Caves. We can go here, which is in level 17 Wilderness, which all we have to do is go out the west gate here, or we can use a Revenant Cave Teleport, which actually puts us right over here. And this is going to be sitting inside of level 40 Wilderness, and you can just simply go into the cave here. Now we'll bring up the caves, and do note that once you go into the caves themselves, you can no longer use the entrance. So when you come into the cave, level 17 entrance is here, level 40 entrance is up here. You will note that these blue arrows are where your escape routes are going to be, so these are the staircases that you can use to get out of the dungeon, or you can teleport out as well. Now if you haven't visited the Revenant Caves yet, there is a requirement of 100k gold to enter. The game will deduct this from your bank, allowing you to minimize the risk of carrying the gold within the wilderness, so you don't have to have it on you. As long as you go to the cave entrance, it will ask you and simply just deduct it from your bank. However, do note that when you pay this fee, it does make you a target for PKers, as they can gain at least 100k if they kill you within the cave itself. If you are unfortunate enough to die, you will lose the 100k and you will have to pay again to re-enter. But don't worry too much, as once you get the hang of killing Revenants, 100k really becomes very easy to earn. So to combat people easily just teleporting out of these caves, Jagex did implement a change that now forces a 2-tick delay, which equals out to 1.2 seconds when trying to teleport out of the dungeon. This means that you cannot simply teleport out in the middle of fighting, but you can remove this delay if you complete the Hard Wilderness Diary, which I would definitely recommend to complete as soon as possible. And once you have done the Hard Diary completed, you should go from dying a few times to almost never dying, as long as you're staying alert when fighting the revs. Alright, let's talk about skulling in the caves. Now you can enter the cave with the skull, and this does dramatically alter the loot drops from the Revenants, but be warned that when you are skulled within the caves, you do become a much higher priority for PKers to come after you, so having that Hard Diary completed becomes more of a requirement if you want to go down that route. But do note that even if you are unskulled, this doesn't mean that you won't be targeted by every PKer, but it does tend to have some effect on how eager they are to chase you down. Alright, so now that we know that we need to be hyper aware of our surroundings, let's take a look at Runelite, the launcher that most people are going to tend to use, and see a few add-ons that we can use to help us stay focused and alert. Alright, so the first add-on I recommend is going to be the Player Indicator plugin. That is going to be the player indicators we see here. We'll go ahead and hit Edit Plugin Configuration. Now, the things that we're looking for here are to draw tiles under players. Now, this allows you to sometimes see people as they're just logging in before they fully load. Sometimes it'll actually draw the tile underneath them. And then down here, we're going to see that we can highlight other players here in red, and then we're going to simply make sure this is set on PvP. That means it will not show up on players when we're not in PvP wilderness zones, but only when we go into those dangerous areas. Another option that I do try to, use is going to be these draw names on minimap. I find it a little bit more helpful to see those names on the minimap. Sometimes you can see them from a little bit farther distance. Alright, so moving on to our second plugin, we're going to be taking a look at Wilderness Player Alarm. Now we're going to go into this configuration, and you will see the first item here is the alarm radius. Now this is going to be how much of a distance the enemies need to be near you before this alarm actually goes off. I typically find between 20 and 25 works best for me, but feel free to work with it and see what works best for you. Another thing I like to do is actually hit these desktop notifications, which will send it to your Windows when an alarm triggers. And then lastly, we can see here the flash color. Now you can change this color. I've left it on by default, but you will see it actually show up on the screen here. We'll go out through here, this west gate, and it should prompt here. And this is the kind of look that we're going to be seeing. It can be a little bit annoying. It does take a little bit getting used to, but if you are in the middle of fighting and you see this go off, you can easily get to your teleports and get the heck out of those caves a little bit quicker than you might have before. While on the topic of teleportation, the Royal Seed Pod and the Amulet of Glory are great options for teleporting out of Wilderness levels 30 and below. Then we also have the Ring of Dueling, which can be used in Wilderness levels 20 and below. I typically bring this ring as a secondary teleport to get back to the Enclave itself quicker to regear and then get back into the dungeon. Now the Seed Pod and the Glory do have their limitations as well. First, the Seed Pod does require the completion of Monkey Madness 2, but it is easily clickable in your inventory, while on the other hand the Glory is easily purchased. You do have to right click it in your inventory to rub the necklace to be then able to choose where you want to teleport. Now you can use another Runelite extension, so let's take a look at that real quick. Now this extension is called Menu Entry Swapper, so we can see here that we have a whole bunch of good stuff that we can mess around with, but as long as we have this plugin enabled, we can simply go over our Amulet of Glory, we can shift and right click, then hit the swap left click. Now we can choose wherever we want this to be easily teleported to. So now instead of having to rub your glory to teleport, you can just simply hit it with your left click and it'll take you to wherever you have this set. So I have it set to Edgeville. If I were to left click, we instantly teleport, which is really awesome. Also note that you can do this with the Ring of Dueling as well. So I usually have this where I can teleport to Edgeville and then teleport to the Enclave almost instantly with just 2 clicks of a button. Now let's move on to the rest of the gear I recommend for lower levels. For armor, I highly recommend the best Dragonhide armor you can wear for its affordability and protection. Use a Dragon Breath shield to counter enchanted Dragonstone bolts used by PKers. This gives you an extra spot not to have to bring a anti-Dragon Breath potion. Now if you don't have this unlocked yet, any cheap offhand shield will suffice. For headgear, a simple coif is effective and snakeskin boots work well for your feet slot. For the glove slots, I suggest leaving empty initially, since you can just wait for the Bracelet of Ethereum from the Revenant kills. But do note that if you are much lower level and are opting to fight some of the stronger Revenants, bringing the bracelet with you instead of waiting for a drop can be more beneficial, since this is going to limit how much damage Revs can do to you. While on this topic of the bracelet, be sure to enable toggle absorption by right clicking the item. This allows you to automatically pick up ether from the revs and will keep it charged while you fight. So that way you don't have to run to those loot kills all the time if the only drop you're getting is the ether itself. And then lastly, for the back slot, we're going to be using an assembler for range setup. And don't worry, if you're doing a melee setup, I would just recommend any cheap cape that you have in your bank. One of the great things about weapons for low level revenants is you have some great flexibility. That means you can either use daggers, swords, scimitars, darts, bows, or crossbows, all very effectively. I typically prefer ranged weapons, and some of the standouts would be either the magic shortbow, since it does have a special you can use, or if you can wield it, is using the new Hunter's Sunlight crossbow. This does require 66 range and 50 hunter, but its ability to shoot as fast as a short bow and hit very hard makes it very difficult not to recommend before we even get into the cost of obtaining one. Now, as of this video, the crossbow goes for 5500 GP and the bolts are 116 GP each in the Grand Exchange. The next thing I want to talk about is the food that you should be bringing with you. Now, if you're going to bring the Bracelet of Ethereum, you're not going to burn through as much food, so you can bring some of the lower end food, and you're going to be getting blighted food from drops. So that's blighted anglerfish, blighted carbombs, and also blighted manta rays. But now if you're going to wait for that bracelet for a drop, I would recommend bringing a mixture of all sorts of foods, especially if you're going to get chased by a PKer. Having some tick eats and things like that can be very beneficial. As you can see on my screen here, we have, just a nice healthy mixture. We also have an anglerfish to overheal if we need to, so that it gives you a little bit more time to escape. And one good thing about fighting these revenants is you are going to see these items as drops as well, so you can constantly refresh your supply in your inventory. While we're on the topic of inventory, I do want to take a moment here to talk about a special tip, and that is your looting bag. Now, there are some cool features about this looting bag that can make your rev experience a little bit better. So if we simply right click, we will see a settings tab. From here, we're going to hit settings, and then we can see how many items to store when using the items in the bag. So if we want to have the bag closed and, say click on some monkfish and add it to the bag, we can have it set to a certain amount so we don't possibly, use our whole inventory of fish just all all of a sudden it's in the looting bag and we no longer have access to it. And then we also have another option is putting supplies into the bag, or don't put supplies into the bag. Supplies are classified as potions and boots, so this is perfect to have enabled, and I currently have it enabled. That's why it's asking to put the supplies in the looting bag. But while you're out there, you can just have it where you can just spam click the ground as the loot shows up and not have to worry about picking up that food that might make or break your experience and, you know, keep you alive in the future. Now, before we go over where to fight the Revenants, I do want to make a note that people seem to forget, and that is don't be discouraged if you die. While 100k might seem like a significant amount depending on your account, Revenants can easily provide you more than 100k in loot within minutes of being there. Learn to recognize when to teleport out to secure your loot and avoid excessive risk. And remember that there isn't a threshold on how much to earn before teleporting out, so if you want to teleport out after every drop of 20k or more, feel free to do that. It is really up to you on how much you want to hold on to and how much risk you want to take. Now, time of the day does tend to have an effect on these caves as well, so if you find yourself being jumped by a lot of PKers in every world, think about taking a break and coming back at a different time of the day where it might not be so busy and you might have a little bit more success. Alright, so let's get to the good part. We're going to be here at the level 17 entrance. We're going to go ahead and go right into the cave here. So we'll just jump right in. And then right to the north is going to be the Revenant Imps. Now these have a level, they're level 7 and they have 10 HP, so you can one hit them depending on your range level, and they're pretty easy to kill. But do note that this is a cave entrance area, so you're going to see a lot of people coming and flushing through this area, especially PKers. Now we're going to move on to the east over here to the Revenant Goblins. Now these are a little bit higher, and you'll also see right here that I'm going to mark the staircase. This is your escape staircase that you can get out of these caves pretty easily. So this goblin spot is kind of nice because you can escape so quickly, but do note that PKers can chase you up the staircase and, you know, continue to fight you all the way through the wilderness, but you will come out at level 17 wilderness. And if you're not teleblocked, maybe you can tank that all the way either to the Enclave or just straight out of the wilderness. Now moving on here, we're going to go even more east and a little bit north now. Now you can see that that's level 20 wild. We're starting to get into level 22 wild, and this is where these hobgoblins are. Now this is one of my favorite spots because it is so good for killing these hobgoblins. They do have a little bit more HP, they are a little bit harder to hit, and they will hit you a little bit harder. So just be aware of that, and if you keep your head on a swivel, this is actually a pretty good spot. Do note that some PKers still can TBU very easily. I mean, some players are very skilled at doing so, but I find that I have more success at this location. Now let's move on down here to the southwest, and then we're going to go straight north to a little bit deeper into the Rev Caves. Alright, so here we are at the Revenant Pyrofiends. Now these guys are level 52 with 48 HP. As you can see, we're just under 30 wilderness, so we do have the ability to teleport out, but the unfortunate part about this spot is it again is in a path where PKers are running through. Also, PVMers that are just trying to kill Revenants are running through to go to the higher end Revenants themselves. But I have found that, you know, because the sightline is so big that you can usually see whether or not people are running at you with the skull. You can also kind of get away. There's some angles here that are a little bit harder for people to entangle and TBU here. So it's kind of a mixture of a spot, but I do find that Pyrofiends are a pretty good loot of the Revenants. So I would just kind of take it by a case-by-case basis here, especially the time of day. You know, if you're here when it's not, but you can see that I was able to easily teleport out, and then I'm easily able to go back to the Enclave. So let's go a little bit deeper into the wilderness again to the other area where we're going to go to the Revenant Cave Teleport. All right, so I've taken out the Revenant Cave Teleport from my bank, and we're going to go ahead and just hit that. And then right here is the entrance to the other part of the Revenant Caves. And again, you can see that you cannot get out of this entrance. So we have to find that staircase, which is actually right here. Now this area is a little bit harder to get to that staircase because of the Revenants that we're going to go try to fight. Again, we're going to go over here to fight the Revenant Pyrofiends, which are a little bit south. And like I said, I have it marked on the ground here that you can see the level 30 wilderness. So these Pyrofiends again are sitting between level 30 and level 28 wilderness. And again, they are the same level as the last ones. And you do have a little bit more protection in this area. I will say, because of these walls right here, it is a little bit harder for PKers if they're not in the right position to TB you or entangle you, but you will have quite a few PKers come here to try to get you. So honestly, you have to be hyper aware. Make sure you're kind of noticing when those PKers are running at you. And you can see these two yellow marks on the tiles, and this is where those Pyrofiends are actually going to spawn. But if you notice that every time I fight these Pyrofiends, I'm using that wall to kind of block me, because typically the PKers will, you know, teleport in from either like the northeast, or sometimes they'll actually just spawn in and switch worlds right in this section. So that's it for the Pyrofiends. Let's move on to the next section. All right, so we're going to continue up here to the northwest, and this area is interesting, I would say, to say the least. So we can see that there's actually more imps up here. Now, this place is kind of secluded, but you do trade off because you're in this northern part of the Rev Caves that it is a little bit harder to escape. You can see that there is a jump point right there in green, and that is 75 agility to get over this pillar. So if you don't have 75 agility, or maybe, you know, if you do, and the PKers a lot of times do have that type of agility as well, so getting out of here is pretty hard. And then if you do want to teleport out of here, you have to run all the way southeast back to those Pyrofiends in that level 30 wilderness to get out. So just be aware of that, but sometimes this spot can be a gem. You might have noticed in the previous clips that I do have a bunch of tiles that are just randomly highlighted, and this is used with a Runelite plugin called ground markers. This allows me to hold shift, right click the ground, and hit mark tile. Now I typically use these for either spawn locations or just creating a line in like the dungeon or wilderness to dictate where maybe level 30 wilderness is and level 20. That way when you're getting chased by PKers, you don't have to constantly look over to the right of what level wilderness you are. You can kind of just know what tile you need to get to before you can teleport out. So that's all I have for you on this updated guide. Stay tuned for more RuneScape guides in the future, and feel free to leave any suggestions in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on new videos that are going to come out. I'll see you next time.
Love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100.